A minister friend of mine shared this story. It's a true story, and it happened several years ago. A young man in a church named Eli, a member of the church, pulled into a service station late one evening, and one of the elders of that same church was there at another gas pump. And they became involved in some conversation, and young Eli realized, to his hurt and heartbreak, that older member that he had gone to church with for years had been drinking, and he was inebriated pretty badly. Eli, young and dumb, he said something to him. "Man, have you been drinking?" That old man never even hesitated. He come around that gas pump and pushed Eli and shoved him back, and the gas nozzle fell out of his hand. Eli looked at him in shock. "Dude, what is that all about?" "It's me, Eli." This guy who was an elder in his church, he drew back on him. And when he did, Eli shoved him. The guy fell backwards, tripped over the island, and hit his head on the metal corner of the island, and was dead in 2 hours from a brain bleed. This minister friend of mine called Eli, and he said, "Eli, the whole church is in turmoil. The community's in turmoil. We've got to deal with it, man. We got to deal with it." Eli said, "Pastor, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. If I could just take back, if I could have just got my car and left. Why did I shove him?" The minister said, "I'm coming over to get you, Eli. You and I have got somewhere we got to go." He came to Eli's house and pulled in, blew the horn. Eli came out. He got in the car and he said, "Where are we going, preacher?" He said, "You know where we're going." He went over to the house of that man's widow. They had buried him the day before. Eli said to the minister, "Pastor, I know you know what you're doing. I just don't think I can face her." He said, "Eli, you have to face her. You have to face her." "Preacher, please help me. What am I going to say? What do I say to her?" He said, "I'm going to pray with you, and the Spirit of God is going to give you the words to say." They knocked on the door, walked into the house. When she saw him, she dropped what she had in her hands, wiped her hands on her apron, and ran toward Eli. She buried him in a bear hug. And she said, "Son, it's okay. It's okay. Eli," here's her words, "I've known you all your life. I remember the night you were born. I know you never intended to harm my husband. You're forgiven. You don't need to ask. You just tell everybody how much I love you, and this will go away soon." Eli and the pastor walked out of that home. He looked across the seat at the pastor and he said, "Where in the world did that woman get such love as that?" He said, "Well, Eli, you know that. I preach about that love every Sunday. That woman loves Jesus. That came from Jesus. You know that. But hugging me like that, how could she hug me like that?" And the minister said to him, "What I say to you, did you need that hug? Do you need a hug? Jesus has got one for you. It doesn't matter how miserably you failed. The resurrected Christ has got a hug for you. He will encourage you. He will forgive you." You see, his followers had made some big mistakes. Holy Week hadn't gone so well for them. They were confused. The night of his arrest, they all forsook him and fled except Peter, and, well, you know what Peter did. They didn't know what the next move was. And so I take you to the week following the empty tomb. We go to John 21. It's a touching passage. Christ has been resurrected. He's looking for Simon Peter. Simon Peter at crunch time had failed. You know the story. Well, he needs forgiveness. He needs new life. He's gotten the message of Mary. Mary said he would meet me in Galilee. We're on the Sea of Galilee. This meeting's going to happen. Well, Peter, he's going to make it happen now. He's all in. And you know what he did? He jumped over the side of the boat and waded the shore, the Bible says. And when he arrived there stood Jesus with fish cooking and had bread, and he offered him breakfast. And then he says to him, he says, "Peter, do you love me? Follow me." Peter's heard that before, hasn't he? In those words, he goes back to that day on the seashore when he was drying out his nets with his father, and he remembers the call of God on his life. but he remembers other things too. But my friend, Jesus was there to encourage him. When we need encouragement, he's always there. If anybody needed encouragement, Simon Peter did. His failures have been magnified. Jesus and the disciples had completed their Last Supper in that upper room and gone out to the Mount of Olives, and oh, how quickly things happened, and here we are. It's important to remember that Jesus never gives up on us. That's my message for you today. The risen Christ will meet you in the midst of your discouragement to encourage you. You know what the word encourage means? It means to put the heart back in. So what would you think the word discouragement means? To tear the heart out. Somebody under the sound of my voice had your heart torn out by failure, by shortcomings, by not being able to keep promises. It happened again. The risen Christ would say to you today, standing beside you, I still love you. I still believe in you. I still have work for you to do. I can still use you, Peter. I can still use you, ma'am. The risen Christ wants to encourage you. He not only wants to encourage you, he wants to forgive you. If you need forgiveness, he's there to forgive you. Simon Peter needed forgiveness. And while he's thinking that, Jesus says to him, Peter, do you love me? So his thoughts are interrupted again, and he says, Lord, you know I love you. Peter, do you really love me? Feed my lambs. That pushes Peter over the edge, and he falls into the embrace of grace. He's not only said, I love you. He's not only said, I forgive you. He's saying, just go back to work for me. I've got work. Just go to work for me.